We're talking today with Dick Hollebeek of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Dick, can you start us off with some background on yourself and to begin with where and when were you born?
I was born in Sanborn, Iowa.
What year?
In 1924.
Okay.
And my father was a minister, and he had different charges in Iowa, and he ended up in Linden, Washington, a small town at that time of about 2,400 people. And that's where I left for the service.
Okay. And how old were you when you moved to Washington?
I was in the 5th grade.
Okay. So you go to high school. Okay. High school in Washington then.
I went all the way from the 5th grade through high school in Linden.
Okay. Now, do you remember how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I certainly do. I used to leave church on Sunday mornings and run home because my dad had a shortwave radio, and I would listen to shortwave. I had heard speeches by Mussolini and by Hitler, and I turned on the shortwave, but all it was about Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran back to the church and told the people, and nobody would believe me. But it was true. And it was probably 11 o'clock Sunday morning at Linden.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you had listened to speeches by Hitler and Mussolini. Were you paying attention to what was happening in the world before Pearl Harbor?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
The big important things was whether Joe Louis would beat Max Melling,
Mm-hmm.
that type of
Okay.
thing.
All right. So you're like 17 years old when Pearl Harbor happens. Did you want to go and enlist?
I was 18.
Okay. So you're born 24.
Yeah, 17.
17. Okay. Now, did you want to go and enlist, or what was your response once you found out we were at war?
Well, I'll tell you. I got out of high school, and I got offered all kinds of jobs on a farm that would keep you out of the Army. I got so sick and tired of that, I told my dad, I don't want you to even talk to any farmers anymore. I want to go in the Army or in the service.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way I could do that is go to the draft board and ask for an early call-up,
Okay.
which I did.
Okay. So now, what did your father think when you tell him I want to go?
He did not argue with me at all. No, he was well aware of what was going on.
Because I think you had mentioned that he was fairly conservative in a lot of ways, but I had asked you, was he an isolationist?
No, he was not an isolationist.
Okay, so he understood that maybe we had to do this. All right. So when did you actually enter the service?
March 17, 43.
Okay. And where did they send you for basic training?
They sent me to Camp White, Oregon, which at that time was nicknamed the Alcatraz of Army camps.
And why was that?
It was out in a desert. It had, when it rained, it was red clay, and it would all stick to your shoes, and they'd make us march in that stuff, and your feet felt like they were 20 pounds apiece. And then they would say, okay, go back to your barracks. Well, you had to clean your shoes or you're going to get in trouble. As soon as you got up in the barracks again, you're probably there 20 minutes, and they call you out again in the drill field and get your shoes dirty again.
Mm-hmm.
And they did this time and time again to let us know who's boss.
Sure. All right. Now, how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to life in the Army? You came out of a little small town, minister's son.
Well, it wasn't real easy. I think the first time I ever shaved was in the Army in front of a whole bunch of guys. Yeah, they're probably still laughing.
And were you shaving with a straight razor at that
Yes.
point? Yeah. Okay.
That was, and yeah, same way with the showers. You shower with a bunch of guys.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in a separate stall. You know, that was a wake-up call.
All right. And just how were you treated by the drill instructors and people like that?
I think we had some real good drill instructors. They were all Army veterans. They all came back up here from Panama, and yeah, I think they were fair.
And did you understand what they were doing or why they were making you do the things they were doing?
I understood a lot more later. I couldn't figure out why in the world we'd have to go on an 80-mile hike in 4 days with full field pack and swim across a river and all that kind of stuff, and do compass work at night in the woods. But it was all for a reason.
Did that experience help you when you were actually in the field?
I think it did, sure.
All right. How much emphasis did they put on kind of spit and polish stuff?
On what?
Spit and polish, just the discipline and dress and all that.
They were very. We had a captain. It was a. We called him a 90-day wonder. Okay. And if he didn't want too many guys in town that weekend, he'd hold an inspection on Friday. If you had a wrinkle in your shirt, you get gigged. So we learned how to put rubber bands on the button and tie it down so there wouldn't be a wrinkle. So then he'd find something else wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We had one poor guy, he had a black beard. He could shave and you'd still see a beard.
Mm-hmm.
And that captain made him go in and shave 3 times. He still gigged him. The guy couldn't help it.
Mm-hmm. How old do you think the captain was?
He was probably 40.
Okay. So, but he was someone who maybe came out of civilian life and got made an officer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how long was there sort of a boot camp or basic training phase that you have first and then you're just on active duty, or was it just all training?
We were in the States 6 months, the
Mhm.
whole time at Camp White, Oregon.
Okay. And were you in a unit pretty quickly once you got there?
Yes.
Okay. So what unit were you part of?
The 216th Quartermaster Salvage Repair Company.
All right. And what was the function of that unit?
We were part of a battalion that they would go to the battlefield, collect all the thrown out, damaged, worn out equipment, clothing. Another company would wash all the clothing and stuff. Another one would sort it and they bring it to us. And we repaired shoes, webbing, all leather goods, clothing, and then it would be stockpiled so that a unit could come in and right from the front and get all the stuff they needed instead of having to ship it all the way from the beach.
All right. And what kind of training did you get while you're still in the States?
We got infantry training, double dose.
Okay. But did they train you to do any of the repair work or that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, that we got most of that training. We got a lot of it in the States, but when we got to England, we were there 6 months before the invasion, and we did a lot of training there.
And at that point, I mean, did any units come back with stuff? Like, because some units came from North Africa and went up to England before they landed. Did you train on actual used equipment, or was it just whatever they had?
No, we would go into different areas that the British were using.
Okay.
And sometimes the British were training us and sometimes not.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the British had different equipment than we did.
Yeah.
But I guess a lot of the skills for repairing leather or clothing or stuff would be similar.
Yeah, it's all.
Okay. Now, did you have a special job or assignment? And was there one kind of repair that you normally did?
Yeah, I ran a sewing machine.
So you joined the army to run a sewing machine.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was to repair clothing and pup tents, you name it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you had about 6 months in Oregon. Now you mentioned going into town. What town was near there?
Medford, Oregon.
About how big was that?
Well, I don't know. It's probably. I didn't get in there too often. I don't know. It's probably the size of half of Grand Rapids.
Okay, so a decent sized town,
Yeah.
and bigger than the one you came from.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And what was there to do in town?
Well, they had a lot of bars. They had a lot of dance halls. And of course, the churches were trying to have parties for the troops.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the guys, it was weekend, it was to the bars.
Yeah. Drink and chase women. Yeah. Okay. Did you find a church there to go to?
Not in Medford,
Okay.
but I went to chapel every Sunday at Camp White.
Okay. All right. And did you get to leave home before you went overseas?
Yes, because we were on maneuvers, and we were told that we were alerted for overseas duty. We did not have any furloughs yet.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we got back to Camp White, Congress passed a law. Nobody went overseas without having a furlough. So I got a furlough.
Okay. About how long was it?
6 days.
Okay. And what was it like to go home right before you were going overseas?
Well, I didn't tell anybody but my dad that we were alerted to go overseas. So he and I figured out how I could let him know where I was at any given time.
Okay. And what was that system?
It was a certain letter of a certain numbered word of every third sentence.
Mm-hmm. And did the censors ever figure that one out?
Yes, they did.
Oh,
No, censors never did.
Okay, censors didn't.
No.
Okay. So you leave Oregon. Where do you ship out from?
From Camp Shanks, New York.
Okay. And how did you get from Oregon to Camp Shanks?
By a troop train with the oldest Pullman cars you could find. Going through the mountains, they had about 3 engines on that thing, and they're all burning coal. And you go through a tunnel, you thought you'd die of all the smoke.
What time of year was it that you were going? Was this like
It was,
late fall or?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's all color in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. But the windows in the train were open at some point?
They weren't open, but they leaked.
Oh, okay.
By the time we got to New York, everybody needed a shower because we looked like black troops.
Mm-hmm. How long did that train ride take?
Yeah, almost 5 days.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever get off the train, or?
We got off the train at a place in North Dakota, South Dakota, where they stopped troop trains and we got off. We had to do a drill, and we had double time to the city center, and then they fed us with donuts, sandwiches, oranges, and that stuff. But they also stopped that train in Chicago, right in the middle of the stockyards, and the smell was horrible. And we were there for a long time.
All right. So you finally get there to Camp Shanks, and how long did you stay there?
I think it was about a week and a half.
Okay. And what did they do with you during that time?
Not much except inject a lot of needles in our arms.
Okay. Because you had mentioned to me before we went on camera something about getting a bunch of shots. Did you get a first set of shots when you started training? And
yes.
Then, okay. And what happened to you when they did that?
Well, they had a long hallway and doorways on each side, a doctor in each doorway, and we got 12 shots. And some of them were bad. From there we went to the theater and watched a movie which wasn't very good. It was a hygiene movie.
Oh.
And I still had my civilian coat on, and it was hot. I couldn't raise my arms to get my coat off. When I walked out of the theater, I was supposed to be in line with everybody else, I passed out. I woke up and I was propped up against the building and there wasn't a soul in sight. I had no idea where I had to go. Finally somebody came by and said, "Are you lost?" And I said, "Yes, I am." Well, he said, "I saw a whole bunch of troops come out of here and they went over to that barracks over there." So I went there and sure enough, that was the right barracks.
Mm-hmm. So that was kind of welcome to the Army.
That was welcome to the Army, and I thought, what did I ever do?
All right. So this new round of shots at Camp Shanks was probably not that big a deal.
No, that wasn't a big deal. In fact, they lost the records of those shots for some of the men, and they had to have them over again on the boat.
Okay. Now, while you were at Camp Shanks, did they let anybody go into New York City, or did you just stay where you were?
We spent a whole night in New York City from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 7:30 the next morning, in the rain.
Okay.
But we saw different things. We saw a stage door canteen and went to different USO clubs.
Okay. And then what boat do they put you on?
They put us on the Queen Elizabeth. It was docked right next to the big French liner that had burned up and was laying on its side.
Yeah, it was the Normandy, I think.
Normandy. And the Queen Elizabeth, they put us on there with 15,000 troops. We had 2 meals a day. One of them was stewed tomato and what they called a blind robin, which is a dried salty fish.
Okay.
And the other one was what they call a bowl of soup and an orange or a banana. That's all we had for that trip, 2 meals a day.
Okay. What was the weather like on that trip?
We had good weather for that trip.
Okay. And did a lot of guys get seasick anyway, or?
A few got seasick, but nothing like when we came home.
Okay. Well, the big ships are more stable usually and a little better to ride on. And if the weather's good, yeah.
They zigzagged all the time. It was a zigzag trip, but.
And do you have an idea of what kind of course they took to get you to England?
They went south of the Azores, And between the Azores and Africa, they cut straight north, and we went all the way up to the Frith of Clyde, which is, we embarked at Glasgow, Scotland.
All right. And then from Glasgow, where did you go?
We took a train, an English train, and we went all the way to southern England called Wales, Tenby by the Sea, a little resort town. And we slept that night in a garage because we got there about 2:30 in the morning. We all had hobnail boots on, and we were marching down the streets in near cobblestone. We must have woke up the whole town. But we spent the night in a garage. The next day they found places for us to stay.
Okay. Was your company on its own, or was your whole battalion there? Or?
No, just our company.
And about how many men do you think were in the company?
I think there was 208, 200 something.
All right. And now, is this a place where you stayed and trained until you left, or did you move on?
We stayed there till they found a place in Liverpool.
Okay.
While we were there, they made us do close order drill on a sandy beach. And one day the captain thought it would be really smart. He made us wear raincoats and a gas mask. Close order drill on a soft sand beach. So many guys came down with bad colds that a colonel in the medical department told our captain, that's enough of that. And so that stopped. We ended up going to Liverpool. South of Liverpool is a place called Seaforth. And we were in Seaforth Barracks. It's an old army base. We had bunks that were just boards, and they filled bags of straw. That was our mattress. We were there until we left for the invasion.
Okay. So while you're in England and Wales, did you have much contact with the local population in those places?
Yes, we did. We'd go to town in Liverpool, and we had furloughs to London. I had dinner in an English home. I went with an English girl for a while. And I went to different church services. I went to Christmas programs. Yeah, the English people were very nice to us. They were very nice.
Now, were you in places where there were a lot of American troops, or not? Maybe not so many?
Well, Liverpool was quite full of. There were port battalions there, and there were a lot of British troops. Yeah.
Did you have any interactions with the British troops, or did you just stay apart?
Pretty well stay apart.
Okay.
Yeah. They didn't like us, we didn't like them, because, well, we were getting paid too much. Okay. But yeah, they never caused any trouble.
Right.
If you wanted trouble, you could find it. Let's put it that way.
All right. Now, when you were in Liverpool, did the Germans ever try to bomb the place, or was it quiet while you were there?
Yeah, it was pretty quiet.
Now, did you see evidence of bomb damage? And
oh yes, oh yes. And I went to London on a furlough. I went through 3 air raids in London, which was quite interesting.
Okay. What do you remember about those?
Okay. One of them, the first one we went through, we were on the 3rd floor of a Red Cross building, and the air raid sirens went off, and some British maids knocked on the door and says you can go to a shelter or stay where you are. All of a sudden, the outside just lit up like you can't believe. And we looked out the window, and there was a huge spotlight, a portable spotlight,
Mm-hmm.
right underneath, right below our window there. So we watched until we had to pull our heads in because all the anti-aircraft shrapnel was dropping on these tile roofs so we could hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So we stood back. But once a spotlight caught a German plane, there were probably 5 or 6 of them, all up there, and that plane had maybe a 2-mile area that he had to get out of,
Mm-hmm.
and he couldn't. Then you'd see a fighter plane come out and get him, see him bomb.
Mm-hmm.
I was there the night that a big bomb hit number 10 Downing Street. In front of number 10 Downing Street. I saw the crater the next day.
Did you, were the Germans using buzz bombs or just regular bombers?
That was just regular bombs. Another time, we were in a theater, and we were watching a movie, and there was an old lady sitting next to me, and his air raid sirens went off, and a screen put up. We will continue the movie. You can leave and find a bomb shelter, or you can stay. The movie will continue. I thought, what do we do? This old lady reached under her seat, pulled out a helmet and a gas mask, put the helmet on, put the gas mask on her lap. I thought, if she can stay, I can stay. And so we did.
All right. Okay. Are there things that stand out in your memory about the time that you spent in England before you went over to France?
Yeah. When we were going to go over to France, we were down near Salisbury. And we were in our pup tents. We were on the coast, waiting to get on the ship. We had to dig slit trenches, and it was all chalk, like the white cliffs of Dover.
Mm-hmm.
But there was not much to do, so we laid around in the grass, and we would watch our fighter pilots chase each other, practicing a P-38 after a P-39. And then in reverse rolls. But they would dive, and they would come so close to the ground that our pup tents would go like that. The backwash of their props, which was exciting to us.
Okay. All right. So when did you actually go over to France?
We went over, I think it was D plus 39 in July.
Okay. And how did you get across the channel?
Well, we got on a boat, the Invicta, and when we got near the beach, we had to crawl over the side of the boat down the rope ladder into a landing craft, and the landing craft got us close enough that we only had to walk in knee-deep water. But that's with a field pack on and your rifle and the whole ball of wax.
Mm-hmm. Did your unit have trucks to move around in, or?
We had some trucks, yeah.
But you're walking on shore, so you're waiting on.
We walked on shore, and we walked. We got on shore, and there was a cement wall there. And there were German soldiers by that cement wall. Well, they were prisoners of war.
Mm-hmm.
They were being guarded. They were going to go back on that ship to England.
Do you know what beach you landed on?
Utah.
Okay, you were on Utah.
And my buddy was a bazooka man. I was a rifle grenadier. I had grenades strapped on my legs. I was weighted down. My buddy weighed 98 pounds. He was a bazooka man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our company just got spread all over the place. Nobody knew where they were going. Finally, it got so bad that this is 8:30 at night. I said to my buddy, I don't know how far I can go anymore. Let's take a rest. So we both dropped off into the ditch. He got my canteen out and I poured it over my head. And we rested there probably an hour. And here comes some more troops down this road. I recognized the sergeant's voice. So I said to my buddy, I said, we better join them. So we did. And we walked till about 2 in the morning. And finally, that sergeant said, I have no idea where we're going, where we are, how to get there. He said, let's spread out across this little hedgerow here and catch some sleep, and we'll find it in the morning. That was okay. So, you don't get much sleep when anti-aircraft is booming over your head and tanks are going by. And one tank, he had a trailer behind him, and he went into a slide, and he couldn't back up. So the guy poked his head out of the turret, and he said, blankety blank, there's nothing back here. Let's just go over this little hedgerow and take a U-turn in this field and go right back. So we all start yelling like crazy. Everybody jumped up. Just what they did.
Mm-hmm.
They took a big U-turn in that field, back onto the road. And we never finally got our unit all together till about 3 o'clock that afternoon.
And why had they gotten so spread out?
Who knows?
Okay. Somebody just gave an order to start marching this way, and they just fell apart.
And it's all in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And where we finally assembled as a unit was in an area where there were gliders all over the place, or parachutes hanging in the trees, and
So it's one of the original drop zones, the landing zones for the paratroopers from D-Day.
yeah.
Okay. And do you have a sense of how far you were away from the front lines at that point?
I presume maybe 5 or 6 miles.
Okay. And how long before you kind of went to work and started fixing things?
It wasn't long. As soon as they got our big mobile trailers, which was probably a week and a half.
Mm-hmm. And so what did you do in the meantime?
Not much. It was just filling in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't do a thing without your equipment.
Did you make trenches or set up?
Oh yeah, you had to dig foxholes, and at night. Well, we got our trailers, and at night, everything we had to work 12 hours a day. The Germans would send over some planes over the beaches, even one plane,
Mm-hmm.
just to wake everybody up. And but you had to have a slit trench that you could jump in. I have a piece of shrapnel in my footlocker that I heard coming, and I heard it hit the ground. When the raid was all over, I reached over like that, and I felt it. And I have that at home.
Mhm.
Not at home, but in my footlocker.
Okay, so you definitely know there's a war going on.
Oh yeah.
All right. And then were people bringing, so you're the part that went out and collected stuff, they were coming in, bringing in equipment for you to work on then?
Yeah.
Okay. And about how long do you think you stayed there?
We moved, I got it right here. On July 19, we were at Utah Beach. July 20, we were at Signy. August 3, we were at St. Lo.
Okay.
August 20, we were at Verviers, France. The Madeleine. And we sometimes we stayed 3 days, sometimes a week.
Mm-hmm. Well, once they pushed through at Saint-Lô at the end of July, then the German defenses start to collapse, and we start moving forward pretty fast across northern France.
Yeah.
All right. And so you move, set up for a couple of days, and then have to move again to catch up.
Yep.
Okay. And then where did you stop for a while next?
The longest place we stopped was at Verviers, Belgium.
Okay. And when did you get there? That probably is in your list here.
We were there from October 26th to December 24th.
Okay. And what was that area like, or what do you remember about that place?
It was a typical Belgian town on a river. We stayed in a paper factory that was halfway demolished, but it was out of the snow and the rain. And at that time, the Germans start flying over their buzz bombs. So it was difficult to get sleep because the Germans rigged those bombs. They either, when the motor shut off, they either went in a long straight glide, or they went into a circle glide, or they came straight down.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a staff sergeant that went berserk on account of those.
Now, were you being targeted, or were they just flying past you, going somewhere else?
They were just shooting those things to hit a city somewhere.
Okay, yeah. So they shot a lot of them at Antwerp and
Yeah.
so forth. Okay, but you could hear it. Now, did some of them fall short or land closer to you, or
Did what?
did any of the buzz bombs actually hit near where you were?
Yes, they did. One of them hit the top of a hill, probably a mile from us, maybe less than that. It knocked me against a brick building, and there was windows up above, and the glass came down. And we went up there the next day, and it left a hole, probably 50 feet in diameter and 20 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
And it peeled all the tiles off of a French farmer's house. So we helped him collect his tiles and put them back.
Now, when you stopped and stayed in one place for a while, did you start to meet the civilian population there?
Yeah, not much though. When we were in Verviers, we were more friendly with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we enjoyed the kids.
And would the kids come up and try to get food, or just say
Well,
hello, or?
You know, they'd ask for gum,
Mm-hmm.
but no, they never begged. Even though our garbage truck would go to the dump, and before he could turn and back up, and people were climbing all over that truck to find a half a wiener or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So you knew they didn't have a whole lot.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, you're there, and then you get into December. Like 16th of December is when the Battle of the Bulge starts. What happens to you guys once that gets going?
Well, one night we got aroused. On the 16th of December, we kind of smelled something was going on because all the civilians were going down the street and said, "You guys got to get out of here. The Germans are coming," and they're moving. They're pulling carts and ox carts full of their stuff, and I don't know. It was dark already. And we got roused out to go up in the hills and put up defensive positions. And there were 5 different areas that were all lit up like forest fires.
Mm-hmm.
We figured those were small towns or something that were burning. And that was on the 16th. And so we were there till December the 24th.
Okay. Now, where was your town relative to either the old front line or places like Bastogne or things like that?
I think where the Germans ran out of gas was probably about 10 miles from this town.
Okay. So you're kind of farther west. You're not right up by the front where they broke through.
No, we're on the north part of it.
Okay.
Where the Malmedy massacre took place.
Mm-hmm.
We're north of that yet.
Okay. All right. And so you set up defensive positions, and did you stay in one place, or did they move you around, or?
No, we had the same positions. We had trenches built up there in the woods.
Mm-hmm. And did you just have infantry weapons?
Yeah.
So the bazooka was about as big a thing as you had.
Bazookas and rifles and 50 caliber machine guns.
Okay. And did you stay in that position, or did you evacuate, or what happened?
We evacuated on December 24, Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
It was below zero, about 12 below zero. There's probably a foot to 16 inches of snow on the ground. And they put us in trucks. And they said it's going to be a cold ride because we're taking all the tarps off the trucks. And we asked, why are you doing that? And they said, the forward patrols of the German army are probably across the road where we're going. They're forward patrol.
Mm-hmm.
If we get fired on, we'll hit the ditch and you can spill over the side instead of all coming out of one area in the back. So, okay, we got all the overcoats on and boots, and we started down the road and it was blazing cold. So we decided to take our blankets and we cut eye holes in the blanket, threw the blankets over our overcoats, held them down with our steel helmets, and we went to the center of the bed of the truck, all put our arms around each other, and we were in a big circle. Yep, it was fine except our breath. We had ice from our nose to our shoulder by the time we got to 17 miles south of Brussels.
Okay.
A little town named Gistoux. And there it was 2:30 in the morning. I slept on a tile floor in the latrine of a bar.
It was still better than the truck.
Yeah, and the next day they found lodging for us in different chateaus there. We were there till from February 15 to March
Well,
19.
didn't you go there December 24th or 25th?
Yeah.
So where are you
Oh yeah.
December, January?
December 24, we went to Gistoux.
Right. And then did you leave there in February or?
We left there in February.
Okay. Now, while you were at Gistoux, did you get back into business and were fixing things again?
Yeah, but not full time.
Okay.
It was kind of everything was trying to get back into the routine.
Mm-hmm. All right.
This is the time that they decided we could go to Brussels and have a few days off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, did you get any German air attacks at that time, or was it quiet where you were?
The only air attack we got into was that was near Hersfeld, which is close to Verviers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we were in pup tents. It was all mud. No matter where you went, it was mud. Our pup tents were a mess. I had a slit trench in front of my pup tent. And that had about 3 inches of water in it. And one day, some German planes come out of the clouds and they dropped some butterfly bombs, they called them.
Can you explain what that is?
Well, it's a small bomb. It's an anti-personnel bomb. And I understand it had a pin on it with a little propeller on the top. Anyway, I hit my slit trench, and another guy jumped right on top of me, in the mud, in the water, and we had 7 people injured on that. The one person about 20 yards away from where I was had both his feet blown off, had his ankles, and I saw his shoes. It looked exactly like somebody took a razor blade and went right down the middle and cut those strings. They were all just sliced right through.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole sole of his foot was still in the shoe. And he was begging somebody to shoot him. He had been with our outfit for 2 weeks. He was from Brooklyn. He was married and had two children. And I don't know, I have no idea whatever happened to him, but we got him to a hospital.
Mm-hmm. All right. Were those about the only casualties you took, or were there others at different times in the campaign?
Yeah, we had one that got wounded in Normandy, but he dove for a ditch and he hit a barbed wire fence.
Hmm.
But otherwise, no. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We had accidental deaths. Yeah, we had a suicide.
But not the combat casualties. No. Okay. So you stay at that place in Belgium then for a month or so. In February, then you move on. Okay. Now, are you heading toward Germany now, and where are you going?
Yeah, we're headed toward Germany. We end up, we were outside of Aachen. We went through Aachen after it was captured. And then we went to outside, we were in a big paper factory just outside of Düren,
Mm-hmm.
which was leveled. And every other day they would spray us with powder, DDT powder, because of the rat population in Düren. I've heard different figures, but they said anywhere from 10 to 13,000 people dead under the wreckage.
Because that was part of the whole Hürtgen Forest area, which had had very heavy fighting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we moved and we went to Castle, outside of Castle, and Calder, and we ended up in Hersfeld. And that's where we were when the war ended.
Okay. Now, as you were advancing, did you see many German POWs?
Thousands of them. There was, saw one, we go by a PW camp, which was nothing but an open field with barbed wire and no shelter. And there was at least 5,000 in each camp that you saw. Some of them were SS troops. And there were some SS troopers that wanted to be captured as a regular German soldier. And I have pictures of 2 of those that got found out by the regular German army soldiers, and they beat them to death.
All right. Did most of the SS men behave differently from the other German soldiers when they were prisoners?
They were arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
They were arrogant. And even the regular German soldiers, I don't think, liked the SS.
Okay. The regular soldiers, what did they look like?
Like an American soldier, I mean.
Well, were there some who were younger or older?
Oh, well. Yeah, some of them were 12 years old towards the end of the war. I don't know if they had them early in the war, but yeah, I saw 12-year-old kids in a German uniform.
And did you see any of the displaced persons? Because the Germans had a lot of slave laborers, and they were coming out of the camps. And
Yes, we did. I forget where it was exactly, but they had a whole bunch of Russian ladies, and they were loading them on a truck to take them back to Russia.
Mm-hmm. What kind of condition were they in?
They were okay. Yeah. I'm sure they were probably not slave laborers. They were probably laborers, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there were a lot that were brought over for different reasons
Yeah.
in different groups. Okay. Now, there's a picture. You've got a lot of albums and things. There's a picture of you with a Russian soldier. How did that happen?
okay, I went to the Cologne Cathedral, and we were standing there, and all of a sudden this Russian soldier came up, stood next to me. He could not speak English. I said, well, I had my camera, I wanted a picture. Yeah, that was okay. Then one of the Russian officers came, and he could speak a little bit of English. This Russian soldier had a pin on him of a tank. So I figured he was a member of a tank crew that
Mm-hmm.
got awarded something.
Yeah.
So I pointed at that, and that Russian lieutenant, or whoever he was, an officer anyway, he says, submarine, submarine. He didn't know what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
He probably thought that was the word for a tank
Right.
in English. And they were there, drove up, of course, in an American Jeep. A lot of their equipment was American
Mhm.
trucks. And they were just examining the cathedral.
Right. So they were tourists.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, once the war ended, what did you and your unit do? At least
Our
the war in
unit-
Europe ended. Yeah.
Our unit went to Camp Boston. Boston.
Well, when was that? That was later, right? That was...
Yeah. We went to Camp Boston.
Where were you before Camp Boston?
We were in Hersfeld, Germany.
Okay, and about how long did you spend in Hersfeld?
From April 25 to August 6th.
Okay. And while you were there, especially after the Germans surrendered, how did you spend your time?
Oh, we didn't do any more repair work,
Mm-hmm.
but we did a lot of sightseeing, and the Army let us go on R&R. We went to Switzerland for a week, or you could go to Paris, or you could take a trip back to England.
And which one of those, what did you do?
I went to Switzerland, which was wonderful. And they treated us like we were world beaters.
Okay. Did you get to Paris too?
I got to Paris, yep, and I was there for 4 days, I believe it was.
Did they have places for you to stay there, or what did you do?
They had places. We stayed in a hotel, and it was great. You could get some good food. Went through the Notre Dame Cathedral and the Folies Bergère. You know what that is.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good for a minister's son from a small town in Oregon, but okay, come a long way.
I had my eyes open. Yeah.
All right. Now, was there talk of having your unit go to Japan? Was that part of the plan?
That was part of the plan, but they didn't talk about it.
Okay.
They kept, we went from Camp Boston to Camp Philip Tarrington, and that Philip Tarrington was a camp near Le Havre, so we figured, oh boy, we're gonna go home. Nobody said anything. Well, we got on the list to get on the boat, and 4 days before we were to sail, the Japanese gave up. And they changed our destination for Japan to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big relief.
All right.
We landed in Boston on Thanksgiving Day.
Now, what was the weather like on the trip back?
We had a storm of 70-mile-an-hour winds, 40-foot waves. The brand new flag that was on the ship when we left, there was a little piece of blue left when we got to Boston. They wouldn't let us out on the lower decks. And they had lifelines you had to hang on to. There were so many guys sick. I was very fortunate. I didn't get sick, but that way you ended up on KP duty.
Mm-hmm.
But I did manage to get some pictures. A 40-foot wave is a pretty big wave. And I can still remember, it was 2 weeks after I landed in Boston before I got home. And I could sit in a living room chair and close my eyes, and I'm still going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed it. But I don't know why I wasn't afraid. You look out the side and you see a big wall of water coming at you. And all of a sudden you're going up so fast you can't get your feet off the deck. And the next minute you're up on your tiptoes.
So it's a giant roller coaster ride.
Huh?
It's like a giant roller coaster ride or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
All right. So I guess you were in Germany. What was it until late August, and then went to the coast, and then
home.
And then, but you got home in November. So
Yeah.
I guess where are you September, October, or were you still in Germany then?
let's see. We were in Hersfeld, Germany till August 10.
Yeah.
And then we went to Camp Boston, which was in France.
Right. Okay.
And we left Camp Boston on November 8th.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to Camp Herbert Tarrington, which is near Le Havre,
Right.
on November 15th, or November 7th.
Okay. So Germans would have surrendered back when you were at Camp Boston then.
No, they surrendered.
Or rather, the Japanese surrendered.
Japanese did.
Yeah, you're there. Okay, I'm just getting the sequence together. So, okay,
Yeah.
you get back. Now, this tape is just about done, so we're going to pause right here. All right, now in your story, we've kind of gotten you to the point where you go back to the U.S. Before we continue, though, I want to backtrack a little bit. In your pictures and things, you had some of a concentration camp. Did you go, it was Buchenwald you went to? Or
Buchenwald.
okay, and did you go there after the war was over?
Yeah, no.
Or was it, well, still going on?
Approximately 2 or 3 weeks after it was captured.
Okay. And what did you see there at that time?
Well, the gallows were there, the ovens were there, there was just a few of the prisoners were still there, and it was pretty well cleaned up,
Mm-hmm.
but it was terrible yet.
And did they explain to you what had happened there?
Yeah.
Okay. Because the...
In fact, I got a picture of a Frenchman holding a box. He said, these are my friends.
Mm-hmm. So you have... And was that something that the Army kind of organized for you guys to go through and see that, or did you just happen to show up?
Yeah, they kind of organized it. They were sending groups.
Right. Okay. All right. But now you get to the end of November, you get back home to Boston, and then you had to stay there a couple of weeks before you went home, or?
No, landed on Thanksgiving Day. They had fireboats out with their hoses, and they had fire trucks out on the docks, and the 1 millionth man that came back, I don't know if it was through Boston or total, but got the key of the city, but they were carrying him off of the gangplank because he had drunk too much.
Oh.
So he didn't realize he was getting the key to the city. But then we got to the camp in Boston, and they fed us. It was 10:30 at night. You could have turkey, you could have pie, you could have ice cream, you could have all the milk you wanted, whatever you wanted. If you wanted a steak, they fed you whatever you wanted, and that was great. And then I had to split away from my company because I was going to get discharged at Camp Atterbury, because after my father died when I was in Germany, my mother and sisters moved to Grand Rapids. And so I had to leave the company there.
Okay. Now, when your father died, did the Army do anything for you, or?
We were in Hersfeld, up in this schoolroom. I was sitting on my bunk, and my staff sergeant got called to the captain's office. He came back up and he sent my closest buddy down to the office. And my closest buddy came back up and he says, the captain wants to see you. I says, who is it, my dad or my mom? I figured something. So I got down to the captain, and you go through all this salute and all that stuff. And I said, who is it, my dad or mom? He says, open the telegram. It was my dad. So that telegram was 2 weeks after he was buried. They couldn't find me, I guess. So I thought, oh my gosh, now what? So I went back up, and of course my staff sergeant, or squad sergeant, and buddy, they knew what it was. So I was sitting on my bunk, and my squad sergeant threw a Bible at me. He said, "Here, maybe this will help you." And he hit the edge of the bed, the cot, landed on the floor. And I picked it up, and it was at Psalm 91. Well, that psalm had hit me 3 or 4 times already since I got into the Army. So that's a special psalm for me.
But there's no sending somebody back home at that point or anything else like that.
They wouldn't even let me go see my dad's brother in the Netherlands. They said it's all black market over there. And besides that, the highways are plugged with German soldiers. The war was over. They made them all walk home. They weren't allowed to ride anywhere. They had to walk home if they wanted to be free. So they wouldn't let me go see my dad's brother. And they said, "I'll tell you what we will do. You can take your buddy and you can have a half a day off." So, okay. So we went, we're in Hersfeld. There's a beautiful cathedral there. And I went to the cathedral with my buddy, and there's a big sign on the door, "Off limits, you will be court-martialed." I said, "I'm going in." And my buddy says, "You better not, you'll get court-martialed." I said, "I'm going in." The organ was playing. So I walked in, and there was about a 12-year-old girl coming down a stairway. And I went like this. Where's the organist, you know? Oh, she went like this. So, okay, I followed her up the stairway, and here, up in the loft, overlooking the congregation, or the assembly down there, here's this old man. I called him old then. He is maybe 60, 65, playing the organ. And he turned around and he saw us 2 soldiers in uniform. He stopped playing, he went to "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God." And from there he played, I don't know how many hymns that he knew, we knew. Wow.
Yeah.
That was something. He got all done. And he turned around, gave me a big bear hug. And I thanked him. He couldn't speak any English. But he knew.
You knew you were there for a reason.
It was just the right time.
All right, now we can shift back again. We'll bring you back home again to the States. So you get back Thanksgiving, and then you head off to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, get discharged there, and then did you go to Michigan from there, or what was
I went
next?
right to Grand Rapids,
Yep.
and they had no home. My mother and 2 sisters were living in an upstairs of my aunt's house, which was no kitchen, just some bedrooms out
Right.
there. We were looking for a house. I was ready to go back to the Army. So my brother was a minister. He was up at Falmouth, Michigan. I went up there for 2 weeks. I just had to get away. So actually, I never got a homecoming I didn't get back to Linden, Washington for 15 years. And I've been back now about 4 times, but I never had a homecoming.
Okay. Now, once you got to Michigan, then, what did you do? Did you find a job or go to school, or what happens?
I tried to find a job. I did find a job in a local factory here. I won't mention the name. And they set me against the south wall on a buffing machine. The sun blazing in the window.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is not good. My neighbor who'd worked there for 40 years, he said, oh, it's not bad yet. Wait till you're there a few years. He says, when you go to bed at night in the summertime, you wake up in the morning, the shape of your body is all outlined on your sheet. I said, it ain't gonna be mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, it's either that or I'm going back in the Army. So I looked around and I ended up working for a commercial photographer, West Dempster Company, for 5 years. I went to school, photography, and it just didn't pay. So I went to Steelcase. I was there for 32 years and I was in supervision for about 14.
Mm-hmm.
So I retired from there in 85.
And when did you get married?
When did I get married? In 1948.
Okay. So that was, and were you working for the photographer by then, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I've been married 66 years. My wife's in a rest home right now. So.
Right. Now, to look back at the time that you spent in the Army, what do you think you took out of that, or what did you learn from it?
I think this country would be much better off if they did like Switzerland. Everybody spends 1 year in the Army. There's so many young people today have no discipline. And I don't care what kind of character you are, you're going to learn discipline in the Army. I know I was a guard in a stockade a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
They learn fast. And I think there's an awful lot of stuff going on today that wouldn't be going on if these people learned in early, not youth, but early in their age, what discipline is all about.
And do you think you got that out of your Army experience?
I think so. Yeah. I respect authority. Yeah. And I know I got called on the carpet in the Army. I can tell you what it was about. We were in Gistoux, Belgium. It's cold. There's a foot of snow on the ground. We're in a nice warm chateau, waiting to see what's going on, to move back. And the captain calls the company formation. Put your boots on, your overcoat, the whole ball of wax. You go out in the parking lot, stand there for 10 minutes, dismissed. You go back, take all that stuff off. Half hour later, call company formation. He did it 3 times in a row.
This is the same captain you had at the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
3 times in a row. So I went past my platoon sergeant and I muttered, what a bunch of bird brains. my platoon sergeant reported that to the captain. And so pretty soon I get a message from the orderly, captain wants to talk to you. Oh, okay. I went in there, state your name, serial number, the whole ball of wax. Did you call us a bunch of bird brains? I said, yes, sir. I wasn't gonna lie, the sergeant's standing right there.
Yep.
He said, I can have you court-martialed. Or I can send you some infantry outfit. What do you prefer? I said, I don't want to go either one. He said, you think we're a bunch of bird brains? I said, not really. But I said, it's kind of ridiculous that we get all dressed up, stand in the snow, dismissed 3 times, and we get no orders. Well, that's for us to know. So he let me off.
Mm-hmm.
But you learn. You learn. I still think it's some of the best training you can get. Not necessarily military training,
Right.
but there's too many kids growing up today that are just playing with a game on TV and
Or with their phones.
yeah.
All right. Well, listen, you got a very good story here, so I'll just close this out by thanking you for taking the time to share it today.
Well, I hope it's interesting.
Certainly. All right. Go.